Are German companies taking part in China's oppression of Uyghurs in Xinjiang? An investigation by German media outlets alleges a partner company of chemical giant BASF is involved in human rights abuses. I'm joined now by Adrian Zenz. The investigation is based on his research. Adrian, those are some serious allegations. Can you briefly sum up the findings of your research?
Yes. On the website of BASF partner Markor Chemical, who jointly owns two joint ventures with BASF on the same industrial compound, on their website were detailed reports about activities of this entity through village-based work teams that staff of this company were joining government teams, penetrating Uyghur villages. It said eating, sleeping, and working with ethnic minorities in the region. Particularly incriminating were details where they discussed the monitoring of so-called focus households. And these are households that were prime targets of the re-education campaign. And then it talked about making plans and preparations for entering households at night. And we have corroborating witness and documentary evidence that indicates that this can relate to either police interrogations in the middle of the night or worse, detentions into re-education camps.
Right, let's have a look at how this connects with BASF specifically. BASF has a strong and expanding China presence. It has two joint ventures in Xinjiang specifically. They're both located in the city of Korla, and both plants are run in cooperation with BASF's partner company Markor Chemical. Now, the report, which was made in collaboration with German news magazine Der Spiegel and broadcaster ZDF, says employees of Markor, the BASF partner, were involved in a campaign to spy on Uyghur households in 2018. Employees of this BASF partner conducted home visits that are part of a Chinese government initiative to monitor and indoctrinate the Uyghur minority group. Adrian, carrying out research in the region is notoriously difficult. How can you be sure about your findings?
Since 2016, I've been pioneering a methodology that corroborates evidence from a number of different sources on Chinese internet, online statistics, government databases, and economic reports. And this kind of policy analysis really looks at different levels. So we need to understand the policy context and framing, which in this case, these village work teams are extremely well established from witness accounts, from extensive anthropological research within the Xinjiang scholarship. The evidence we have, by the way, is not just 2018. We have documents from Markor's own website, as well as state media reports and other reports on Chinese websites with photos showing Markor staff in these situations, ranging from 2017 all the way to the middle of 2022. And they all speak about the same very well-known and established phenomenon of how the state uses not only state employees, but also companies and other entities to send teams to spy on Uyghurs and to identify them for mass internment.
Now, DW contacted BASF about the allegations, and this is the reply we got. BASF states the reports found by the quoted German anthropologist are from the website of Markor Chemical and not from a website of one of the two joint ventures. We currently have no reason to believe that employees from our joint ventures were involved in the measures. They also said we regularly review the working relationships at our joint venture locations in Korla. As a result, we can confirm that none of these reviews have found any evidence of forced labor or other human rights violations in our joint ventures. Adrian, how credible do you find BASF's defense here?
I find this defense to be very problematic for two reasons. Firstly, it is true that the data is from Markor Chemical. However, Markor Chemical, all the four companies, two of which are the ones jointly owned by BASF, they're all on the same compound. Also, they are potentially sharing the same website. I have so far not identified separate websites that BASF spoke about, but rather on the Markor Chemical website, its own CSR reports and other reports also state the names of these other entities at the beginning of these reports, these incriminating reports, including the names of the 2 joint ventures owned by BASF. Now, further down, it talks about Markor Chemical work teams, but is the separation really so clear? I think from that, it's very questionable how much this is really separate. And secondly, if BASF actually had been aware of the policies and the ways companies are implicated, wouldn't they have taken further steps to safeguard their reputation? It's more likely that BASF is in fact not unaware of course, the wider policies and the mass internment, but unaware of the details of how policy is implemented.
Now, some might say BASF carried out audits, and that's all they can do in this case. They've done what they're supposed to do. What do you say to that?
Especially given our historical background as Germans, and particularly the background of companies such as BASF and Volkswagen, both of which were, with their precursors, implicated in the atrocities of the Holocaust. I think it's really shameful and wholly inadequate to say that you can wash yourself clean with an audit. We have seen this, for example, with the Volkswagen, the pseudo-audit conducted just late last year, which really could not demonstrate that Volkswagen has no connection to the wider atrocity. In a situation like in Xinjiang, where we have such a comprehensive atrocity carried out on so many levels, targeting millions of ethnic minorities, the only ethical and responsible action is to withdraw, is to get out of it. Also with forced labor, state-imposed forced labor. All the Coalition to End Uyghur Forced Labor and all the experts are calling on these companies to divest, to get out, because you cannot easily audit yourself out of this situation. And so I find this response to be quite cynical and deliberately, I think, disregarding the wider problem we are looking at here.
Now, as you mentioned, it's not just BASF that's caught in the crossfire of human rights allegations in China. A recent report by Human Rights Watch alleges that car manufacturers like Toyota, Volkswagen, Tesla and BYD apply weaker human rights standards at their Chinese joint ventures than in their global operations. The investigation states that the car makers may be using aluminium made by Uyghur forced labor in their supply chains. Now, why does there seem to be this double standard for companies operating in China?
It's twofold. On the one hand, China is an important market. These companies sell cars not just worldwide, but also in China. And secondly, it is very difficult because, for example, the aluminum, just like with cotton, it's being mixed from Xinjiang with aluminum and materials from other parts of China, or even those imported, and becomes no longer traceable. So traceability is greatly hampered, and that is compounded by the fact that the Chinese state criminalizes labor audits. Chinese labor auditors have been harassed, even interned. And now with the new national security laws, these kind of audits in China have become increasingly impossible.
Right. If you're saying traceability is impossible, what consequences, in your opinion, should these companies draw then?
In the case of supply chains that are not fully traceable, companies have to divest not only from Xinjiang, but to be safe, to be free of forced labor, they have to divest from China, from Chinese supply chains that don't afford the traceability that's necessary for ethical production. And that might be a difficult step in some cases, but companies who truly want to be free of forced labor or of profiting from an atrocity will have to take the step. That's the geopolitical reality we're now looking at.
Right, but China is a giant market for these companies. Leaving China would equate to economic self-harm, and many would say it's not that simple. You can't just sit out such a profitable market. What do you say to that?
They don't have to withdraw from the Chinese market. They have to adjust and divest their supply chains. This might require using cotton not from China, but from other places. It might even require importing aluminum for Chinese production, which would raise cost. But the thing is that ethical production in a context of state-imposed forced labor will be more expensive. That's a reality. It's a price you have to pay. You have a choice. You can either be cheaper and have and accept forced labor risks, or you can really focus on your ethical standard, and you will have to accept a higher cost.
Now, the EU is meant to vote in a new supply chain law this week. It would punish companies for environmental and human rights abuses in their supply chains. Germany will abstain from the vote because the Free Democrats, who make up part of the governing coalition, reject the proposal. Do you think this new law can change anything?
The new law is a good first step, but it is not designed to combat state-imposed forced labor. It's designed to combat company-based forced labor, which is a good first step, but it's not adequate to address the situation in Xinjiang. For this, you have to make special separate provisions, recognizing, just like the ILO in Uzbekistan back when there was state-imposed labor in a cotton harvest, you have to declare an entire context to be tainted with state-imposed forced labor. This provision is included in the proposal by the European Commission and Parliament of a ban of imports into the European market. However, that step has to be agreed upon, and we will have to see if it's going to turn out to be effective, because there's a lot of hesitancy by European individual countries to single out China or to take effective steps against Uyghur forced labor because of the economic implications. Again, just like with industry, also in politics, we see an unwillingness to pay the price that will be necessary to really make the right ethical choices in this very difficult situation.
Adrian Zenz, thank you so much for speaking to us.
My pleasure.